We are back on the Rational Boomer podcast. Hopefully, your day is going well. When you hear this, it will be Friday, and a lot of stuff have been happening all throughout the week, and we're going to talk about some of that stuff. And I'm very fortunate to have a guest on the show today, a guest we haven't heard from for quite a while. His name is Fred. He's out of the Chicago area, and it's always a sight for sore eyes. Uh, I was telling you before you came on that I really like having guests on, especially in my current state, because I have a cold and talking creates me coughing, and that is not very productive when you're trying to do a podcast. So I can let other people talk too, and people with some intelligence and some insights that I respect. So I'm glad you're able to join us today, Fred.
It is absolutely my pleasure. As you know, you summoned me. It's like I was summoned to the principal's office, and I had to show up.
Yeah, well,
But
we've been
I'm,
talking about you coming back, and I was desperate, and I said, "When the fuck are you coming back?" And
yeah, it's exactly what you said.
that's pretty much what I said. Yeah, it's no different. So since we last talked, what's your feelings about all that's been going on in the country? How are you feeling today as opposed to what you felt like a couple months ago?
I mean, you know, I've been trying to stay positive and stay disconnected in a sense. Um, just because if you get too worked up about it, you're not going to sleep at night, and it's just
No,
not good for your mental health. So, I mean, uh, I spent Thanksgiving with some Trumplefuck relatives, which is always a pleasure.
nice. Was there a
And
fight?
no, there was an agree to disagree on their part. Um, but me, I had to get the last word. I had to. Well, I've got facts on my side,
Yeah.
and I get the agree to disagree. So okay. You know, I look at the whole thing as just entertainment at this point. Um, but it's my view that anyone who's gone that deep down the rabbit hole is not coming back.
Right.
And it's just I say my piece, and I
How do
know
you?
how I'm going to vote.
How is that though? I mean, you're having Thanksgiving dinner with these folks. Presumably, at some point, you were friends with these folks or relatives with these folks. You had some respect for these folks, and then they come out with this absolute bullshit that has no basis in fact. How do you maintain any respect for somebody who's allowed themselves to do that?
It's hard. I don't get emotional about it. I'm way past that.
Yeah.
I used to get offended and try to change their mind, but I've become in the mindset the last 6 months to a year. I'm never going to change their mind. So all I can do is present them with facts. I mean, one of the things we touched on was one of my relatives at this Thanksgiving said, "You hear what?" And it's always they have to direct it towards me because they know I'm involved in politics, and
Right.
and I care and I have an opinion. So it's always, "Oh, your boy Biden," and I'll be like, "Hang on a second, he's not my boy Biden." you know, I don't have a Biden bumper sticker. I don't have a Biden shirt. I don't, I don't having that. I don't need that. And it's like, well, yeah, did you hear he gave $6 billion and to fund the war in Hamas? I said, oh yeah. I said, tell me about that. And it's the whole thing with the $6 billion being parked at the Qatari bank
Right.
to earmarked for Iran. And I have to, educate them. And I said, and I'll be like, where did you hear that? It's like, well, I heard it on Fox News. They said the $6 billion went to Iran to go fund Hamas. I said, no. I said, if you dig a little deeper, you would know that $6 billion was earmarked for Iran, but for humanitarian purposes, and they've long since frozen that money. So it's just, I almost feel like at this point they know the conservatives or the Trumplicans in family that we deal with. They know I'm a liberal, and they just try to get me, you know, try to get me wired up, and it just doesn't work anymore.
Well,
And I think
yeah, I think that's the best course. Whenever I've talked to Trump it's I don't get excited, I don't yell or scream. That's that's home to them. That's where they're comfortable. And they need you to engage on that level. And if you don't, it fucks with their head. And you know as well as anybody, I enjoy fucking with a guy's head now and again. Uh, but the for whatever reason, they're willing to believe something that's not true. I've said this before too. I think one of the reasons we're so divided in this country is because of the media. I've talked to folks like you've talked to and gave them straight facts like you did, and they'll act as if they never heard it. And you think that's ridiculous because it's common knowledge. But when you think about where they're getting their news information, it's not out of the realm of possibility. Fox News, Newsmax, OAN, none of them report the things that might be negative to the Republicans. So they honestly don't fucking know.
Right, right. And another thing, where we were for Thanksgiving is in one of your favorite Congresswoman's districts. We were in Katie Porter's district.
Oh,
We used to live in what was her district, and they switched it around a little bit. But where we were was in Katie Porter's district, and they had to take a shot at Katie Porter, how she doesn't know what she's doing. I'm like, seriously? I'm like, she is probably the best qualified person to become a senator in California. Like, I would vote for her in a heartbeat.
yeah.
And like, well, why? And I start naming like, well, she comes to congressional hearings prepared. She's not afraid to call people out. And I said she's amazing. And they're like, well, she just doesn't know what she's talking about. I said, you actually watched her talk? Like, she brings the receipts. And they just, it's what they hear on OA and the Newsmax and Fox News. It just doesn't fit their narrative. So,
Right.
and
It's
she's a
not that,
woman. And she's a woman.
oh, God forbid a woman.
Yeah.
But whenever I talk to somebody along those lines, she doesn't know what she's talking about. I'll always say, give me an example. What is it that she said that she doesn't know what she's talking about? And not surprisingly, they're unable to come up with any examples. These people that I talk to that are Trump-fucks, it's really all about they have a mindset, and anything they hear that supports that mindset, they believe. Everything that goes against that mindset, they think is bullshit, with facts not an issue.
That's 100% true. But what I also found very interesting was all the pearl clutching that went on over the Israel Hamas thing. I mean, yeah, we're Jewish. Some people there weren't Jewish, but they seemed to be, and they were the Trump-fucks, and they were the ones who were the loudest. They were like, oh God, how could they let Hamas exist? And, it's like, you probably want Hamas to exist. I said, no, I never said that. I said, but I do have issues with the way Israel has handled certain things. I said, not necessarily the war. Israel has every right to defend itself. What happened on October 7th was an atrocity, and Hamas needs to be eliminated. But at the same time, and there's a mindset among certain people that they just want to eliminate all Palestinians. Like, just get rid of the Gaza Strip, get rid of the West Bank, get rid of everything. I said, how would you feel if someone came to you and said, let's get rid of, wherever you live, let's get rid of your neighborhood, let's just raise it
Yeah.
because they don't like that there's Jewish people living there. Like, how would you, like, I guarantee you that the mindset would be different in that instance. So, that, I mean, I know we had talked before the show, kind of touching on that, but I definitely have strong opinions about the Israel Hamas war going on, and it's not just what's happening now; it's what's been happening for years and years over in that region. And I told you, I'll be the sacrificial lamb for this one,
Well,
because
you're kind of approaching this weird in that you're Jewish, but you're kind of not all in on Israel. You understand the circumstances here. I mean, I think what we can both agree on is the way Israel and Hamas has behaved. Both have some issues,
mm-hmm.
and there's a lot of people who are just citizens, end up being collateral damage, that are struggling and suffering and being killed because of these two entities fighting. Um, Israel's not been too positive with giving Palestinians a place. It's what they've gotten. They've gotten grudgingly, and there's some issues that I don't know anything about that have gone on leading up to this fight. I don't think Hamas attacking Israel was warranted, but this has always been a powder keg down there. It's always been contentious, and there have been wars fought there every so often since well before I was born. I don't know what the answer to it is because I'm just a white guy in my living room, but I don't think this war is the answer to figuring this out. I think it has more to do with diplomacy and people willing to negotiate.
Yeah, and that's part of the problem is neither side really wants to negotiate. Maybe Israel says they want to negotiate, but do they really?
No.
And you negotiate with Hamas, you're negotiating with terrorists. I'm sure any Jewish listener that went to Hebrew school as a kid can probably relate to, at least it's almost like an indoctrination, because you're taught to unequivocally 100% support Israel no matter what they do. And that's how I was when I was younger. Like I supported Israel 100%, but then as I got older, I started questioning the way things were. And I know that, especially with my dad, he was kind of indoctrinated the same way by his dad when he was a
Right.
kid. You 100% support Israel. But when I started questioning it, it was, well, how dare you? How dare you question it? And I mean, even as recent as like last year, I said, Gaza is, it's nothing more than like an open air prison.
Right.
Honestly, I mean, he's like, well, Israel left. It gave them their independence. I said, well, not really. They can't come and go as they please. And then it turns into, with family members, well, they voted for Hamas. They chose Hamas to be their leader. I believe it was 2005 when they chose Hamas to be their leadership. So a lot of the people that are just becoming adults now
Right.
had nothing to do with that. So yeah, the only solution in my eyes, and people have other opinions, is a two-state solution. You have to give the Palestinians autonomous rule over certain territories. That said, though, Israel has given Palestine or Palestinians that choice, I think, on 5 different occasions. And 5 different times, the Palestinians said no, or Palestinian leadership at the time said, no, we don't want that. No, we don't want that. So there has been an attempt in diplomacy in the past. But, I look at it this way: a ceasefire with Hamas is not a ceasefire forever. There was a ceasefire when October 7th happened. So,
Right.
it's a big shit show. It really is. And like you said, it's a powder keg. But I don't necessarily agree with, bombing a hospital, that Israel did bomb a hospital because there were Hamas tunnels underneath it. Well, you have to, I think you have to look at, like, okay, what's the collateral damage going to be from this? You're killing innocent women and children. And Hamas purposely does that. They use
Yeah.
people as human shield. But at the same time, I don't know. I just don't know what the answer is, but I just know that's not what's happening right now.
Well, people have to understand is no matter which war or who's in the war, there's always collateral damage where innocent people die. It's not a good thing. That's why we shouldn't fucking have wars by for any reason. How much do you think religion plays in that conflict? Is that all it's about, is religion? Or is it about
Yeah,
territory or what?
I think it's 100% about, well, I think it's both, but predominantly religion, because when Israel was created in 1948, they basically, and there were some uprisings before that. There was a Zionist uprising before that, and they killed a bunch of Palestinians. A bunch of Jewish people killed a bunch of Palestinians. So I think there's been bad blood for hundreds of years. And, I think it is primarily based, it is the Holy Land.
Right.
And Muslims view that as their Holy Land. Christians and Jews view that as their Holy Land. And I just think that, well, I think religion is the basis for 90% of what's wrong in the world,
I agree.
with
I agree.
wars and whatnot. So, yeah, I absolutely think that religion is playing a major part in this.
I was thinking maybe we could fix two problems at the same time. Maybe if it's a two-state type of thing, maybe we just give the Palestinians fucking Florida, kick Ronnie DeSantis off, and send the Palestine. It's a beautiful state. They're great people. Put them down in fucking Florida and fuck these idiots.
Yeah, Florida and Texas. They can
Yeah,
have them both.
yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, when you listen to Republicans, this is what I find funny. There's messaging out there that suggests young people are angry with Joe Biden because he's siding with Israel for whatever reason. And I don't find that to be true. I talk to a lot of young people. I don't hear anybody saying, I'm not voting for Joe Biden because he stood with Israel. I think this is just more of the same Republican messaging, ways to gaslight and hoodwink people into believing something is real when it's not. Like the whole idea of Donald Trump winning in 5 swing states. That's bullshit. Um, all this other stuff. This is part and parcel to how Republicans wage war in elections. They have no policy. They have no stand on anything. It's just all about smearing their opponent, and it's happened for decades. It started, back with Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden. Now Joe Biden again. This is what they do. It's all about culture wars. It's all about trying to smear people. They don't want to do anything of any value. They just want to make somebody else look bad, own the libtards, if you will. And I think that messaging is simply that. I don't think there are a bunch of people that are mad at Joe Biden and not going to vote for him and instead vote for somebody who wanted to overthrow the country. That's absolutely fucking ridiculous.
It 100% is, in my opinion, as well, Republican messaging. Kind of a personal experience with that. My niece, she's going to be voting in her first presidential election in 2024. And, she doesn't usually talk about politics, but she had overheard the conversation a couple weeks ago. We were having a family dinner, and she said, well, yeah, I would vote for Republican. And I said, why? She's like, well, Joe Biden is like, he just supports Israel and he wants to kill all the Palestinians. I said, who told you that? She's like, well, my dad told me that. I said, where did your dad hear it? Like, I don't know. And I said, well, I love you, and you can vote however you want, but I got to tell you, for a young woman to vote Republican, you're voting against your own interest. And I went through all the reasons why. And she was like, oh, I didn't know that. She didn't know that Republicans want to ban abortion. She didn't know that, that they want to roll things back to like the 1800s as far as women's rights.
Right.
And she's like, I didn't know any of that. And I said, well, yeah. I said, you just got to, I mean, I like your dad and everything, but you got to listen to more sources than just your dad. You got to seek this out on your own. I said, you can vote however you want, but just know it's a fact. You're voting against your own interest if you vote Republican, because like you said, they have no platform, no policies. It's almost like search and destroy, honestly.
Yeah. And if you vote Republican, honey, for Christmas, you can expect a butter churn and a chastity belt. So have fun with that. Fuck. Yeah, well, that's the thing that troubles me more than anything is I talk to people and they just don't know. They hear the clickbait, they see the clickbait, they hear what they hear in passing, and they make judgments based on that. And that's kind of the whole reason for doing what we do with the Rational Boomer podcast is try to give people the full information so you can actually make some choices as opposed to emotional decisions, which most people do. I think that we've got too many people that are ill-informed or uninformed, and this is why we end up where we are. We need to that should be a job of the media, but the media doesn't do that. They only do what's going to get them viewers and not what's going to inform people. And there's the problem we have in this country.
Yeah, I apologize. Like my
no
work
problem.
partner hopped up on my lap. My
dog. I like all dogs better than most people. So
yeah,
I just
got a shirt I got a shirt that says I prefer dogs over people. So
yeah. I definitely do.
Yeah, it's just I kind of lost the chain of thought when she jumped on my lap, but yeah, spot on. That's all I can say. Is that we're in total agreement on that.
Well, when I listen to these people, they make it sound like Joe Biden is going over there handing weapons and money to Israel so we can kill Palestinians. And one of the things I've said on the podcast is they're doing this messaging to try to make Joe Biden look bad because in the end, he's going to look really good. And they know that.
Right.
He's going over there. He's part of the reason for the ceasefire. He's part of the reason for the release of the hostages. He's part of the reason for getting resources into the citizens in Gaza. He's not over there trying to inflame the fight. He's over there trying to settle it down and help people who need help. So how in the fucking world could you mistake him for somebody who's being a warmonger going over there fighting with Israel? That's not at all what's happening.
No, and I was just reading that Secretary Blinken is over there right now meeting with Palestinian and Israeli leaders, and his main goal is to tamp things down. Like, hey, what can we do to end this? Not okay, after the ceasefire, we're going to fight and we're going to give you weapons. It's
Well,
they're trying to be the voice of reason and calm things down.
right. And what's going to happen if after a time they are able to calm this down and get peace in Israel and Hamas? What are the Republicans going to bitch about Joe Biden about then? Joe Biden's going to look like a hero if he's the one that did that. I don't know if you remember, and I only vaguely remember it. Remember when Jimmy Carter did something with the Middle East and put
Yeah,
people together and they signed a paper and he was a hero at the time? Didn't get him reelected, but that's what I see happening with Biden. He's going to negotiate a deal for at least, well, they're all temporary, but a temporary long-term ceasefire, and he'll look good. And the Republicans are going to shit themselves trying to figure out a way to make him look bad.
so it'll be Hunter Biden's laptop again, or something stupid like that. That's all they have. They just
Yeah.
have they can just fling shit at a wall and hope something sticks.
But what do you think about that Hunter Biden thing? You got, you know, Comer and all these idiots want to subpoena Hunter Biden, Biden's brother. And Hunter says, yeah, I'll come, but let's do it in public. And for some reason, they don't want to do it in public. That's a red flag for me.
It's a red flag when someone like Josh Hawley of Missouri, Senator Hawley of Missouri,
Yeah.
says, like, what the fuck are you guys doing? Like, he wants to come in, meet with him. And my whole thing is that James Comer we sent him a lawful congressional subpoena. He needs to comply. We need to talk to him, and he doesn't get to dictate the terms.
Right.
And I'm thinking, like, the lawful congressional subpoena that was issued to Jim Jordan, whatever happened with that?
Right. Clearly, congressional subpoenas have no teeth because he
Yeah,
didn't show up.
and there's no way that that he's going to be prosecuted. There's no way that DOJ is gonna touch this. Because it's a sham. It's tiresome. I get tired of hearing about that and all the investigations and the impeachment inquiries. It's like, you've got nothing. If you had something, we would have heard about it already, or we would
Yeah.
have seen the evidence. And it's just keep doing what you're doing. Keep digging the hole deeper. That's all
Well,
you can do.
when I had that Trump will fuck Jeff on the show, I was really taken aback when we were talking about the claims of election fraud and all that stuff. And I asked, where are your facts? And I was taken aback that he brought up the laptop. I thought, man, you got to let this go by now. I mean, the Trump administration had that fucker for a year and a half and did nothing. And they're so desperate to find something that after the fact, after Biden's in office, they have to go back and try to dig up something there. It's funny when they talk about it, they can't say that there's any evidence or any proof that there's something there. They just keep saying, there's got to be something there and we're going to find it. Well, that's a pretty weak fucking stance to take if you're trying to take somebody down.
I think Elise Stefanik's her stance was she on the Daily Show? I think, yeah, she was on the Daily Show. She said, "Well, I've seen the evidence, and we've got to do something about the corruption." And the whole audience just bust out laughing. She's like, "Oh, no, I've seen it. I've seen the evidence." And they're kind of like, "Well, what is the evidence?" "Oh no, in time, we'll show the American people. I think they deserve to know." But it's the same shit, different day. Like, nothing new has come. There's no evidence. Just move on. But I don't know if Elise Stefanik is she's a willful idiot, or she really is that stupid. I can't. I don't know. I'm probably gonna go with she is that stupid, probably. But
yeah, that's the thing is I don't understand if they just don't know, or they just think I can say anything just to push along my agenda. Because if our agenda doesn't go, the world's going to come to an end. They got to know it's not true. I mean, how many times do they have to be pressed against the wall to prove these things? James Comer has had hearing after hearing. Jim Jordan has had hearings. All of them, nothing more than embarrassments. Mike Lindell keeps telling us, "Oh, I got the facts." He's doing it today. He's losing his company. He's going broke. He's going on trial for a lawsuit with $1.6 billion, and he's still doubling down. You would think adults, never mind intelligent adults, any adult put in that situation would back off and say, "Geez, I'm sorry. Help me save my life." But they still refuse to do it.
It's ego and it's narcissism.
Yeah.
They can't admit when they're wrong, and you experience it with your father. They'll never
Yeah.
admit that they're wrong. If they are wrong about something, they'll double down with whatever they're wrong with to try to gaslight you into thinking that, well, maybe I'm wrong, or
Yeah.
maybe they are right. That's and honestly, Michael Lindell, he obviously has enough of an audience that he can still say that, and people are still going to believe him.
Yeah.
And I, I feel bad for the people working for his company,
Oh, I do too.
and it's local to you, and you know what's going to happen to those people? They're going to be unemployed, but then somehow that'll be Joe Biden's fault. But yeah,
Well, absolutely. We're attacking. You know, Mike Lindell came on and said, "I don't know why they're attacking me like this." Well, you tried to overthrow the fucking country. What are we supposed to do? I mean, that's the thing that people are so amazed that they're going so hard after these people, and they can't believe that somebody's actually pushing back like this. But I got to tell you, you try to overturn an election, undermine democracy, and overthrow a government. I mean, that's a fucking line. Once you cross that line, there's really no going back, and there's no apology accepted for that. That's why I've said, you know, some of the Trump fucks I've talked to that might be family members or friends, I don't see going back and being buddies with them again. Just knowing what they attempted to do to hurt the future for my kids and my grandkids and all the young people. I don't think there is any going back with these fucks.
I know I've said it before on the show. Before my circle of friends compared to before 2020 is a lot smaller,
Yeah.
and I just even family members that I want to talk to, I just can't. And you're affecting the future of this country. You're affecting the future of my son, and when he eventually has children, his children. I just can't. I can't abide by that. I just can't. And it's sad in a sense because these are people that there was a close knit group of us from high school and college, and now it's like I don't even want to talk to them. I just can't.
It's weird. I had my reunion, my 45-year reunion a week or so ago, and I didn't really want to go. And I've been to all of them before that. It's great seeing your old friends from school, and in the last 5-6 years, I've realized that there are a lot of people from my neighborhood that are kind of redneck Trumplafucks, even though it was an urban setting. Um, and I just didn't have the desire to go see them. And being as vocal and kind of higher profile with me, I know that there are some people that know what I do and how I do it. And if I go to something like that, the last thing I want to talk about is politics. But inevitably, one of these Trumplafucks can't help themselves. They'll get in your face thinking they can own the libtard. And then at that point, I told my wife, I said, if they come up to me and say stupid shit, I I can't not talk because I know I can destroy this fucker. And at this point, he's pissed me off, and I'm going to do it. Fortunately, we had something bigger and better to go to, something more exciting for my wife, and I didn't go to the reunion. And I saw the pictures after the fact. It's great to see them, but honestly, I didn't miss it. I just don't want to be around people that think like that. It's just too stupid.
It's funny. I felt the same way. We just had our 30-year reunion, and when the invite came out, I said to my wife, I said, I don't really want to go. She's like, well, you don't have to. And convenience wasn't the excuse. I mean, the bar where they had it was 5 minutes from my house, but I just said, I just don't want to go. I have no desire to go.
Yeah.
And none of the people that I'm still really close with were going. So like, what am I going to do? Like, yeah, we'll reminisce for 10, 15 minutes and they know how I feel about politics. I just don't need to get involved in that. And it's interesting because the area I live in is pretty liberal, but my close group of friends turned out to be like the biggest conservative group
Yeah.
there is. It's interesting because now I don't think if I were like if I know, I guess if I had the same political views I do now or did then that I do now, I probably wouldn't have been friends with them
Right.
at all.
Right. I just want to say too, I know that there are some people that listen to the podcast that went to high school with me. When I say I didn't want to go to the reunion and we got a bunch of Trump-a-fucks, I'm not talking about everybody. There's a lot of people that I still have are friends and good people from my high school. I still see them. I just know that there are a smattering or a few or maybe more than a few that are like that. And it sounds like they didn't talk about politics, and that's fine. Um, but I just didn't have it in me to go. And then something comes along that really excites my wife. I said, fuck it, this is a perfect way to get the fuck out of it. So I did. So any Roosevelt high school listeners, don't think I'm dissing everybody. I'm not dissing everybody. I have a lot of friends from my old high school. It's just, you fucking know.
But you would see them outside the reunion anyway. You
Right,
don't need a
right,
reunion to go see them.
right.
So
Exactly.
that's how I felt, and I'm sure you feel the same way. It's like if it was people that I really wanted to see that I hadn't seen,
I'll call them.
I would go. But I have a good enough relationship with the people that I still have a relationship with. I was like, hey, let's hang out. I don't need to see your reunion. Let's just go out as a small group.
How do you feel? When Republicans talk about Donald Trump, they say 74 million people voted for him. And I've always said that that doesn't mean 74 million people supported him or believe everything he says. I think it had a lot to do with people voting Republican all their lives, dad voting Republican, grandpa voting Republican, and they can't bring themselves to vote for somebody Democrat. I think that's why he received 74 million votes. But I think the base is pretty much all that Donald Trump has now because of all the crazy shit he's done. And I think the base is diminishing to a certain extent too. I don't see his support increasing from 2020 to now. I think if nothing else, it's decreased.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I think 2020, sadly, I don't think a lot of people realize the true extent of what Donald Trump is like.
Right.
And I heard a lot of people saying, well, because of COVID, he job, there were unemployment went up because of COVID. That's true to an extent, but what did he do to try to combat that? He didn't do anything. And you said it a bunch of times on your show. He didn't do anything. You said it to the HVAC Jeff guy.
Right. Right.
What did he do? What
Well,
did
he
he do
said.
to?
Well, he said you can't blame Donald Trump for COVID, and I said I absolutely can. I mean, he's not at fault for COVID coming here, but he is at fault for doing nothing, calling it a hoax, and just letting it ride out, allowing a million people to die in this country. It's already been stated, studies have shown that 3/4 of those people would have lived if Donald Trump had done fucking anything. So the fact that gas prices were low, unemployment was high, and it's because of COVID, I hang that right on Donald Trump because he's the one that started that fucking chain reaction.
What's kind of sad though, if Donald Trump had actually done something during COVID or COVID had not come,
Oh yeah,
I truly believe he would have been reelected.
he may have. Yeah,
And based solely just on the still riding the Obama economy train. Um, I truly believe that, and for that reason, I'm thankful for COVID. And I'm thankful that he's as much of an idiot as he is, because I think when his true colors came out, that's what drove a lot of millennials and Gen Zs out to vote. And I think without the millennials and the Gen Zs, I think he is sitting in the White House right now.
right. Well, the absolute illustration of stupidity, saying that if he'd done something about COVID, he might have won the reelection. I agree. That's a possibility. The reason he ignored COVID, though, was because he thought he would be held responsible for COVID and he thought it would hurt him in the
Mhm.
election. And he was right about it hurt him in the election, but not for the reason he thought. He thought, well, we'll just act like it's not there. It's not a big deal. I can talk over that shit. Well, it overtook everything he had to say, and he ended up losing by a large margin, uh, at least partially because of his handling or not handling COVID and all these people dying. So he was trying to save himself, and he just fucked himself worse, which is so typical of Donald Trump.
I think that if he had said, okay, we need to take COVID seriously, his base hangs on every word that he says,
Right. They would have gone along
whatever
with
it is now, the
anything.
20, they would have gone along with it. And I think he would have gotten the independence
Yeah.
because they're like, okay, well, he's competent enough to handle a global pandemic. But I truly believe that independents are the ones that they're the ones who decide every election.
No
And
question.
Republicans are going to vote Republican, Democrats are going to vote Democrat. You're not going to see any, as much as they try to tell you, you're not going to see Democrats voting for Trump. Not going to happen. You're not going to see hardcore Republicans voting for Biden, but you're going to see those people. Maybe they're moderate Republicans. They're not even independents. They're moderate Republicans. They may vote for a Joe Biden because they see what an inept moron that Donald Trump is. And he lost those people in the last election. And you can blame, and like you said, he ignored COVID thinking it would hurt him, but it came back to bite him because it didn't hurt him in the way that he thought it would.
Now I've kind of put my neck out there and I've said I don't think Donald Trump will be the nominee, in spite of everything that shows us right now tells us he is, because he's so far ahead in the primary thing. I just don't think he's going to be the nominee. There's too much shit going on, too much hanging over his head. And Donald Trump always is prone to fail. So I'm thinking, I can't even explain what's going to happen. I just don't think he's going to be the nominee. How do you feel about that?
I'm on the fence about it because like today, the CEO of Home Depot is a billionaire. He's
Yeah.
like, I don't care what happens with Trump, I'm throwing my money behind him. So there's that mindset, but I think the only logical choice is probably Nikki Haley,
Yeah.
just because she's kind of a quote unquote up and comer. But I don't see a path for her to become the nominee because they're, take it for what it's worth. In the poll, she's around what, 10% maybe.
Yeah.
And, it's just, there are many people I'd say all of Trump's base are with Trump no matter what. I don't care if he goes to prison. I don't care this. I'm going to vote for him. He can run the country from prison. So, I look at it, he wouldn't be the nominee because he would keel over from a massive heart attack or
Yeah.
something.
That's possible.
I don't think it'll be because of his legal issues. I think it would be because of a health issue or something.
Mental issue. Yeah.
Uh, yeah.
Well, Nikki Haley, I just don't see her being the nominee for a couple of reasons. She doesn't have the support. She's a woman and she's not white technically. She
Yeah.
comes from
Yeah.
in India heritage. So I just don't see how she's going to get it. And she's got a long haul to go. Ron DeSantis isn't going to make it. He's fading fast and he's just fucking goofy. Now, I'm going to bring this up briefly and we're going to take a quick break. Um, you're going to hear this on Saturday. So as you and I are sitting here, the debate between Ron DeSantis and Gavin Newsom is going to happen later tonight. By the time you listen to this, it will have already happened. But I'm thinking Ronnie gets fucking destroyed in this thing and his political career is all but done.
I don't even think we need to touch on that because that's exactly what's going to happen. I mean,
Yeah.
Gavin Newsom is so well spoken. He's so educated on all the issues, and who he interviewed with
Sean Hannity.
was not Sean Hannity, and Sean Hannity was the same talking points. And Gavin Newsom's like, no, let's talk about that. And Sean Hannity would try to move on, and Gavin Newsom, no, let's talk about that. Let's talk
Right.
about that.
And that's
So
the strategy you have to use with these people. And Gavin Newsom went on to Sean Hannity's show in his own house and kicked his ass. So do you
yeah,
think
that's
he's going to have problems with Ron DeSantis? I don't think so.
no, it's even though this show isn't airing until well after, we know how that's going to end. we can probably discuss it now and it would still be relevant,
It's
even though it hasn't happened yet.
even though it's not officially predetermined, it's much like the WWE. We know what's going to fucking happen. The champ is going to win, and the loser's going to get his ass kicked. That's just what it is. Now wait, now watch.
Right.
Something will happen, and by the time this airs tomorrow, Ron DeSantis will all of a sudden grow a pair of balls and become articulate and not be awkwardly goofy and win the goddamn thing. I doubt that. I mean, the point of it is this whole debate is just an exercise in ego. Ron DeSantis really has nothing to gain from it and everything to lose. I think he got himself caught up in it because he started feeling himself a little bit. And now I think he's starting to regret it because he cannot come out of this with anything positive. Only thing he can do is lose big. And I think he knows that.
And I can't wait to see it.
I can't wait to see it either. And you folks listening to this probably have already seen it. And it's going to be an interesting news cycle after that happens. All right, Fred, we're going to take a quick break and we will be right back.
Okay.
We are back on the Rational Boomer podcast, and I have Fred with me on the show today, listener Fred, and I appreciate him coming in. He's got a somewhat unruly personal assistant, but it's cool because it's a dog, and I love fucking dogs. So your dog works with you?
She's our yeah, she sits on I have a little setup. So I work at the dining room table and I set her up with, she has it rough. She's got the chair next to me with a blanket and one of her toys. So it's really rough. And then, if the doorbell rings, which it just did, she's got to go yell at the person, and honestly, if someone broke into my house, she'd probably just lick them to death. I mean,
Yeah.
she'd think it was playtime. So,
Yeah,
but I'm happy to have her with me.
Oh, I love dogs. I can't have them where I live now, but and we travel so much. I just it wouldn't be fair. But I love dogs. My nieces and nephews have dogs. My granddaughter has a cat, so I get to see plenty of animals without having to. The worst thing about a dog is I never had a house with a fence, and I'd have these big old dogs, and you'd have to take them out to go to the bathroom. Okay, doing that is fine. But when it's 20 fucking below in a blizzard, you just hate that. And for whatever reason, the dog is going, hey, this is fucking nice. Let's spend an hour trying to find a place where I got to take a shit. I never understood. My dog goes out and looks for 20 minutes for a place to take a shit. And then he finally does. And then he comes back in. And then when we go back out, he takes another 20 minutes to find another spot. Why not go back to the spot that you liked in the first place? Why not save some time? But fucking dogs.
They already marked that one.
Yeah. Yeah. It's probably best I don't have a dog anymore. I'm getting too old and too cranky. I wanted to bring this up because this just happened at the time we're recording this. Donald Trump had appealed Judge Engoron's gag order against him in the New York civil trial. And Judge Engoron put a stay on it, and they took it to the appeals court. The appeals court came back and upheld the gag order on Donald Trump. And you were looking at it and you found something that you thought was interesting about it.
Well, I had been listening, or I'd read a news article about how the line of questioning by the judges seemed to make it seem like that they were inclined to either narrow the gag order or lift it altogether. And the interesting thing too, it was kind of disheartening because I think two or three of the judges, one was appointed by Obama, one was appointed by Biden. I think the other one was appointed by Bush. But the line of questioning just made it seem like they were inclined to either severely narrow it or lift it altogether. But from what I'm reading, and I'm glancing at it again, is that they reinstated it as it was.
Wow.
and no restrictions. I mean, I could be wrong, but I'm just skimming it right now. Um, but it looks like they just reinstated it as is, and like you said off the air, it's like maybe Trump's behavior leading up to this is what caused that.
Well, yeah, his behavior has been pretty bad. But here's another thing. See what you think about this. Every time we have a situation like this where an appeals court is asking questions, you'll get in the media go, "Oh God, it looks like they're questioning this or that." Do you think it's just an attempt by the judges to try to balance it out so they don't get any shit about being biased one way or the other? They ask the hard questions of both sides so they don't get shit in the end. And the questions maybe not something they really are worried about, but they feel like they've got to ask the questions so nobody says they're unfair or biased.
Yeah, it could be, and I I think with I'm just kind of basing this off the current Supreme Court. You can really get an idea of what how they're going to vote by their line of questioning. So I guess that's why I was kind of thinking the way I was when I heard some of the questions the judges in this case were asking. That I'm like, oh God, they're gonna overturn it. And then I was listening to another podcast and they echoed the same thing, and I got nervous because it's like, oh, he's gonna just run roughshod and say whatever he wants and gonna get away with it. But that begs the question, though. Now that the gag order has been reimposed, is anything really gonna happen to him?
Well,
Is
that's the next
Judge
question. And not to toot my own horn, if you'd been listening to the Rational Boomer podcast, you'd know that I said all along they would uphold this gag order. I mean, there's no way they could take it off, but people get suckered in by the little. See, that's the thing is people try to look at what they hear, and they try to gain some inference from that as to which way it might go. And like I said, if these people are just up there, you know, doing the job on both sides just to protect themselves, that doesn't necessarily tell us what they really think or what's going on. But with Donald Trump, once this stay went on, Donald Trump went off the fucking hook and did all the things that Judge Engeron told him not to do with going after his law clerk. Then he even went after his wife. I got to think the judges felt more justified in upholding the the gag order just watching what Donald Trump had done for the last couple of weeks. He's been fucking totally unhinged. He's dangerous. And as I've said before, if anybody gets hurt or anybody gets killed, there's going to be some judges with bloods on their hands for just ignoring the obvious and not holding him accountable and not doing all the things they need to do to shut his ass up.
Honestly, I'm surprised no one's been hurt or killed to this point. I mean, especially Judge Engeron and his law clerk.
Right.
I've read reports that the law clerk is getting anywhere between 30 and 50 calls a day on her
Right.
personal cell phone and
Right.
emails as well. So I am shocked that no one involved, with the exception of Aileen Cannon. I'm surprised no one involved in any of these cases has been hurt or killed.
Do you think it's because most of the real egregious and aggressive people that would fight for Donald Trump are already in fucking jail in DC for the Capitol? I mean, they dealt with 1,000 people that they convicted. Not all went to jail, of course, but I suppose those people that didn't go to jail are a little more cautious about doing shit that might get them put in jail. I think there's a certain amount of fear factor amongst the Trump-fucks. I think there's a certain amount of paranoia too. When they were talked to about the indictments and the hearings Donald Trump had during the indictments, a lot of people thought folks would show up, and they're not. And I heard some media talk to them and saying, "Oh, it's just a trap. Those libtards are going to get us in there and they're going to throw us in jail." Well, that's kind of true. As long as you act up and do criminal activity, yeah, you'll be put in fucking jail. But I think they're all running a little scared at this point.
Yeah, and also, now that I think about it, and you've mentioned this before, that they're typical bullies.
Yeah,
They're gonna talk big. They're gonna say we're gonna do this, we're gonna do that. But when it comes time to actually do something, oh well, no, they curl up and in a corner in the fetal position. Nothing happened. So yeah, I guess, now that we've kind of talked it through, I can see that they're just a bunch of pussies. So
They're pussy ass bitches. It's funny whenever I'm in a situation where I'm talking to a Trumplefuck or somebody along those lines. And I've dealt with bullies when I was younger. I even got bullied a little bit, like everybody gets bullied, but I have a particular disdain for bullies, so I feel compelled to push them when they come up. But when I'm talking to a Trumplefuck and he's ranting and raving or she's ranting and raving, and I just spew facts, and I keep this tone of voice. I don't ever yell. I don't yell at my kids. I don't yell at my grandkids. I don't yell at my wife. Pretty even tone because I taught myself long ago that doesn't do any good to scream. It just makes things worse. So I keep an even tone, but I can sit and talk with a Trumplefuck, talk facts, and they can be screaming and yelling. And when they start losing, this is what they'll say to me. You're crazy. You're unhinged. I can't even deal with this anymore, even though I'm not. They want to
right,
suck
right.
you
Yeah.
into
It's
that.
all projection.
Yeah, they want to suck you into that conversation. And when you don't, they just lie and say you're doing it. Uh, and all they're upset about is that I'm putting them in a position like you were talking about with Sean Hannity and Gavin Newsom. They don't. They like to be able to hit and run, say what they want, and run away to the next thing, so that you have to wallow and ruminate in what they said as if it has some substance, and it doesn't. And when they can't do that anymore, they're fucked because their strategy is lost and they've got nothing else.
Or or they're just trying to create confusion. Like, wait, what are we talking about now? Oh, we're talking about this. Oh no, we've already moved on to something else.
Right.
That's what they're doing. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And yeah, and honestly, I don't know many Trumplifucks that would probably have the intelligence to pull off something like harming, or killing a judge.
Right.
I don't know that they because they'd probably be posting it on some conservative message board or something, and the authorities would get wind of it.
The only
So
thing I'm
they're that stupid.
the only thing I'm concerned about with a judge or a law clerk or his wife is the vast majority are bullies and don't have the courage to do it. But there's always one crazy motherfucker that just doesn't have a right mind at all. Like the guy trying to march to Obama's house with guns or go to the Department of Justice with guns. There's always going to be one crazy person. And Donald Trump said something the other day that hopefully it raises this concern to another level. He's always making threats, not direct threats, but threats nonetheless. And he said something that he said Joe Biden needs to get these trials stopped and the DOJ under control before it's too late. My question is, before it's too late for what? What are you going to do? You're not president. You're not going to be president. It sounds to me like he's inferring that somebody's going to try to take Joe Biden out if he doesn't start helping Donald Trump, which I don't think is going to happen. But when he raises to that level of trying to incite threats, there's got to be a line that he can't cross, and he's crossed all of them up to this point. I have to wonder if that will be the line that says, all right, fuck this. We're putting him in jail. That's the only thing we can do.
Well, look at it this way. What do you think would happen if you posted something like that on Twitter, or I posted something like that on Twitter?
Oh, I know what
How
would
long do you
happen.
think it would take before How long do you think it would take before the Secret Service is at our doors?
I tell
You
you
know,
what,
it,
I've told this story a long time ago, back when we were in COVID and we had the masks. Um, the masks were in shortage, and I happened to have a source in the country that had masks. So I was having a heyday. I was selling tons and tons of masks. And I would go on LinkedIn and I do these videos, and I'd talk like I talk, and I'd say, it's really strange. I'm getting a lot of calls from people I know are scammers or trying to gouge this shit. You got to avoid them. Just come to me directly and I'll make sure you don't get gouged. One day I'm in the shower, wife's teaching her class on the computer, We get a knock at the door. Fucking FBI. I'm making a lot more money than I was making before because there's a lot of business for this. And my wife comes to me and goes, Mike, the FBI is at the door. I go, what the fuck? So I go to the door and I go outside and talk to them. And my wife's freaking out, still trying to teach her class. I take them around the corner to a picnic table that's by the lake. And I said, all right, let's talk. And I really don't know what they're there for because I know everything I'm doing is above board. Otherwise, I wouldn't do it. And we sit down and the FBI guy says, first of all, I just want to tell you, you're not in trouble. And I go, I know I'm not in trouble. I didn't do anything. And he says, the other thing I want to tell you, I watched your videos on LinkedIn. And I said, okay. I said, you're fucking hilarious. I go, well, thank you for that. Thank you for that. He says, you said you talked to a bunch of scammers. And I said, well, yeah. I mean, they're all over the fucking place with these masks. And he said, I'm just wondering, I know you'd blow them off. Would you mind passing them on to us? I said, so you want me to be a narc? And he goes, well, not exactly. I said, no, I'm cool being a narc with these motherfuckers. And I said, and I stole a joke from some show I saw long ago. I said, yeah, I'll help you out with this stuff. What kind of weapon do I get? And they go, you don't get a weapon. I go, okay, could you do me a favor? When my wife comes out, who still doesn't know I'm okay right now, when my wife comes out, could you tell her that I need to go under deep cover for about 2 weeks where nobody knows where I am? Because, nah, we're not doing that. So I'm telling jokes with these guys, and my wife finally gets done with class. She comes around the corner, and she's scared shitless. She sees me sitting with these two FBI agents, and I got them laughing. And she's confused now. She knows the FBI came to my door. She was sure I must have done something. And now I got these people laughing. She's thinking, how in the fuck did he get out of that? Well, I was never into anything. But if you go onto social media and say, I'm going to kill anyone in the government, somebody's going to be coming to your fucking door. It won't take long
Yeah,
at all.
Secret Service, the FBI, somebody. I mean, it would be within hours.
It would be.
Yeah. So the fact that Donald Trump is able to just run his mouth like this, I sincerely hope that okay, the gag order's been lifted. We hear in a day that he's either been levied a massive fine or I'm pretty tired of hearing like, okay, if you do this again, he's going to keep doing it.
Right. I mean, a
So
gag order
there needs
doesn't
to be
mean
something,
anything if there's no accountability.
right? And it's like what you tell a misbehaving toddler. Okay, if you do it again, you're going to get in trouble. There's no consequences. I mean, what's $5,000, $10,000?
Yeah,
His supporters will pay that.
exactly.
So yeah, I keep hoping. Like I've got MSNBC on in the foreground here. I'm hoping that something will, a video of him being let off in cuffs will will show up.
Well, and do you think that's reasonable to say that they would put him in jail? And the question is, would they put him in jail up until the time of the trial? This is New York, so the trial's already going on. Or would they put him in there for 2 days, 5 days, 7 days, just to make a point? And if they do that, what does that do to Donald Trump? I know a narcissist, the moment he comes out of jail, he's going to be talking fucking more because they do not learn and they do not want to admit that they were wrong. And being in jail would suggest he's wrong.
I can't see him going to a place like Rikers Island or yeah, it would have to be something, I think, that like they lock him down in Bedminster or something for 3 days and take away his phone. But
Yeah,
that said, I mean, you've got the extra layer of the Secret Service involved.
right.
How does that work? Are they going to shoot it out with the U.S. Marshals? Like, how is that going to look?
Well, now Secret Service is part of Homeland Security, right? I think it is.
I believe so. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Which would
Pretty
fall
sure it is.
which would fall under the DOJ, I would suspect. Or is that separate? I don't know.
I think they're separate.
But for all intents and purposes, Secret Service is a law enforcement agency. The idea that one law enforcement agency would fight against another law enforcement agency just doesn't make sense. As much as Donald Trump thinks it's his personal protection group, it's like when they say, well, he'll just flee the country. Unless all the Secret Service are going with him, they're not going to let him do that because they're going to be in some shit if they allow that to happen. They might even go on trial. So they either have to leave with him and never come back or stop him. I think the Secret Service seems to be a little tainted, but how many people these days are willing to throw away their lives and their careers for Donald Trump? Fewer and fewer people are willing to do that now, as we're seeing with all the people rolling on him.
I'd be curious I'm sure there's at least a handful of Secret Service they'll go down with him, but
yeah,
I can't see it being all of them or even the vast majority of them.
No.
Like you said, who's going to throw their life away over this man? And what's it going to get from? What's it going to get them? It's going to get them nothing. It's going to get them arrested.
Yeah, no shit. No shit.
Regardless of who the Secret Service works for, they are a government agency, and I think ultimately they would answer either to the Department of Homeland Security and maybe eventually the president. I don't know how that works. I know that he's entitled to Secret Service protection. I don't know how that gets taken away. I just don't know the ins and outs of it. But I think Donald Trump would be stupid enough to think that his Secret Service detail is going to protect him to the death.
Well,
from criminal prosecution.
The thing about it is, if you're a cop or a lawyer or somebody working for a big corporation, if you get fired for cause or convicted of a crime, any of the benefits that you get are stripped away from you, right? So theoretically, that should be the case with a former president. His security details should be taken away because he forfeited it by committing these crimes. I mean, it's untested. No, it's never happened before, but everything we're dealing with now is brand new. So there are going to have to be some decisions made to decide what's going to be done with Donald Trump, because he, without question, is going to be convicted. What happens after that, we don't know.
It's so many unknowns, and even with the whole 14th Amendment thing, I mean, it hasn't been used since the 1860s.
Right.
So now you're saying, a lot of these, I think all of the court cases, Colorado, Minnesota, they've all said, yeah, he can be on the ballot.
Right.
And if he wins the primary, then maybe we'll revisit it, kind of thing. So yeah, I almost feel like the people in the judicial system are afraid to be the first one to do something.
Absolutely. Absolutely. No,
but I think once the first,
that said, in Colorado, they are going to the state Supreme Court. There's an appeal on that decision. So they could come back and say, yeah, he's not on the ballot.
Yeah. And unfortunately, Colorado doesn't matter much. They're going to vote for Joe Biden anyway. But I think if that happens, though, you'll see other states follow suit potentially. I haven't really heard rumblings down here in Illinois about it. I mean, we're going to vote for Joe Biden no matter what.
Right.
But, just the symbolicness of it, just to get him off the ballot. I don't know, because I know if anybody, our governor, J.B. Pritzker, hates Donald Trump more than anybody.
Right.
So I don't know how that's going to go.
Well, you're right about Colorado and Minnesota for that matter. If he couldn't be on the ballot here, it wouldn't make much difference in the electoral count. But I get the impression some people think it creates a domino effect. If it's proven in one state, all the other states will have a much easier time following behind. Like you say, they won't have to be the first one anymore. And it'll be easier to jump in once one state has made that statement.
Because if we see that happen in, say, like a Pennsylvania or a Wisconsin or an Arizona, Nevada, even, it's a different ballgame. And it could potentially, because I believe the Supreme Courts in Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, I'm not sure about Arizona, but they lean to the left.
Right.
As much as Wisconsin has tried to get Judge Protasewicz to recuse herself or fuck with her as much as they can, it hasn't really gotten anywhere.
Well, and if you take one or two, maybe just one, but certainly two swing states out of the mix, he can't win. It's over.
Yeah.
He might as well not be on the ballot anywhere because he can't win.
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, every election comes down to 4 or 5 states.
Right.
And yeah, you get him off of one or two of those, he's done. Will it happen? I don't know. I'd like to see it happen. But, no matter what happens, the Trump fucks are going to cry foul. Like, oh, he wasn't even on the ballot. He should be our president.
Right. Right. Well, once there's a blue wave in November 2024, they can whine and cry all they want, but they've continually lost, and their cries will fade away. They will wane because they won't have as much power as they once had. Down in Georgia, we heard some interesting news that Fani Willis is basically going to offer everybody deals of the 19, and some have already taken them, with the exception of Rudy Giuliani, Mark Meadows, and Donald Trump. Were you surprised by that, or were you kind of expecting that it would boil
No,
down to a few?
I'm a little surprised about Mark Meadows.
Yeah.
And the reason I am is because my understanding is he has federal immunity. So how is that going to work if he's got immunity in the federal case in Washington, D.C., and not in Georgia? Because aren't they? I would think the evidence would overlap to a
You would
certain
think
extent.
so.
So I'm very curious to know why or what's up with there. I mean, we'll probably never truly know why, um, unless the crimes that Mark Meadows committed in Georgia are more egregious than what he did on the federal level. I don't know, but I was happy to see. I mean, you can't give Trump a plea deal. Who's
No.
he going to give up?
Yeah.
And he wouldn't take it anyway. His ego won't let him.
No, absolutely.
I think Giuliani was the ringleader to a lot of this. So yeah, I think he deserves to go down too. Yeah, the only thing that's confusing to me is Mark Meadows. But obviously Fonnie Willis is a lot smarter than you and I, so she probably has her reason, or she definitely has her reason. So she knows what she's doing. So I put my faith and trust in her that she knows what she's doing.
Well, people came to me and said I was surprised that John Eastman is going to be given a deal in Georgia. And I explained, just because you're getting a deal doesn't mean you're staying out of jail. You might get less time in jail depending on what you did. And we also don't know where he shows up in the federal indictments because those superseding indictments haven't come out. It's conceivable he'll be in those indictments, which would be the reverse of what's happening with Meadows. He could conceivably get a deal in Georgia and then get hammered by the feds unless he's willing to give in and give up. I think the misconception by a lot of people is that when you're in a RICO case, especially like this, everybody has the opportunity to cut a deal. And now we're finding out those three top people, Meadows, Giuliani, and Trump, they aren't going to have that opportunity. They don't have to give everybody a deal. They only have to give those a deal that are going to be helpful to them to end this reign of terror, so to speak. And they're going to try to cut off the head of the snake. And that's exactly what's going to happen. And can you imagine how this is going to be interesting? We have a court case with Trump, Giuliani, and Meadows all being tried at the same time on fucking TV. That's going to be awesome.
Oh, it's going to be fantastic. It'll be like, I mean, this is probably an insult, but to Mo, Larry, and Curly, but it'll be like Mo, Larry, and Curly being on trial. What are they possibly going to say? Because you've got 19 people indicted and 16 of them got plea deals, and they're going to testify against you. I mean, everything's going to be corroborated. You can whine and complain all you want, call it a witch hunt, but you're done. You're done.
Yeah, the thing about it is too is as we watch these court cases, like the one in New York, these lawyers, against their own better judgment, are spewing the claims that Donald Trump wants them to spew, and it's embarrassing and puts them in a bad situation, but they continue to do it. That trial down in Georgia, they are absolutely guilty. The evidence shows they're guilty. They're going to have maybe 100 people, all Republicans, testifying against them. And still they will come up with this bullshit and try all these little games. And they are going to look absolutely foolish. And it will be on national television. I mean, given what's going on with Georgia, I almost don't care about the federal. trial. It'd be nice if that was on television too. I don't know that it will be, but even if it's not, the 3 months that Georgia is on TV, it's going to be very destructive to all the people involved, certainly to Donald Trump and the Republican Party as a whole.
And to take that one step further, there is absolutely zero chance that anyone involved in the Georgia case is going to get a pardon,
No,
because it's a state case, and I think the process is different in Georgia. The governor can't just grant clemency. It's a whole drawn out process in Georgia. So they're fucked.
they are absolutely fucked. And I hear people, I see this in the media. Well, if Donald Trump gets elected, we're going to have this problem, this problem, this problem. I hate that they do that because it's just fear mongering. There is no way Donald Trump is going to get fucking elected president. No one can convince me of that. There is nothing that shows me a path for Donald Trump being president. There is zero, polls included. We talked about the swing states where they said this is a perfect example of how the media handles stuff. Well, in swing states, it says that Donald Trump would win by 4% in each of those states. Oh, you better be scared. But in that same poll, there was another question that they didn't report. And that question was, what happens if Donald Trump is convicted of a felony? Well, then immediately everything goes 14% in Biden's favor. Well, of course, there's going to be a conviction. So that first factoid that they put out there is a moot point because he's going to get convicted. So why even mention that? Let's just deal with the conviction part of it. But the media refuses to do that. They instead prefer to go to the scary thing to get everybody upset. And it's a bullshit fact.
Wasn't I didn't. I mean, I heard about the poll on your show and one other podcast that I listened to, but who even did the poll?
Well,
Like, who
that's a
was
good
it
point. Yeah.
done by? And how many people did they interview? What, 1,000 people?
Well, yeah.
I mean, statistical analysis tells you, this is one thing I remember from my statistics class from college. The smaller sample size you take, the bigger the margin of error. So what was
Right.
the margin of error? Was it 5%, 6%? Well, then it could go anyway. Could go Biden winning, even in the current state. So you don't know. They didn't share a lot of the parameters around this poll, and you've said it a million times, and I've come to this way of thinking too. Polls are bullshit.
They are bullshit. I mean, they're wrong regularly. Wrong in 2018, wrong in 2020, wrong in 2000. They were wrong in 2016. They were wrong in 2020, 22. I don't know why people, and then it's funny afterwards. You always hear the polling people say, "Yep, we were pretty close on that one." Really? I don't say if you said Hillary Clinton's going to win in 2016 and Donald Trump wins, how are you fucking close? If you say there's going to be a red wave in 2022 and there's not, how is that close? It's just like politics. They put out bullshit and then afterwards they say, "See how good we did?" Fuck you. These polls are bullshit. I don't buy into it. If
We were close.
if Harlan Crow is back in these fucking things and they have an agenda. Did you hear the email I got from a guy? I don't know if this is true. I don't know the guy, but he said he's one of the people they call in terms of polling for the Republicans. Now he's not a Republican, but they ask him screening questions beforehand just to make sure he's in line with what they want to say. And he knows what they want to hear. So he tells them that. Now he's a Democrat, but he tells them all the Republican talking points. So why do you do that? He said, because they pay me $150. Well, okay. If you're paying anybody for fucking polling, I have to put into question whether it's legit.
I'll second that, because in 2020, for one of our state elections, for the state representative from my district, I got a call, and it started out with, are you planning on voting for? And they said the Republican candidate, a guy by the name of Chris Boss. Are you planning on voting for Chris Boss? I said no. And then they said, okay, thank you for your time. Well,
Right.
I found out that one of my neighbors got the same call, and she doesn't know anything about politics. She's like, yeah, I'll vote for Chris Boss. And then there were all these follow-up questions. And I'm willing to bet that they didn't even use my response in the poll
Oh
that
yeah.
that were going around. And they used my neighbor's response saying, oh yeah, she's voting for Chris Boss, but she doesn't know who the hell he is. And once she got her ballot, I guarantee you she didn't vote for him.
Yeah. These things are so skewed and they have an agenda. It depends on, and Ed has made the point. And I don't know if this is a legitimate point or not. At this stage, I get texts though about polling sometimes, but largely they call landlines. Well, who has a fucking landline anymore? Old people in
Old
rural,
Republican.
yeah, rural Republicans. Well, of course they're going to go for Donald Trump. But when the votes come about, like in Ohio, yeah, we got to abolish abortion. But then when the election happens, nobody wants it. I mean, the thing I believe is that 70% of the people support Roe v. Wade. And if you don't look at any other thing and they continually embrace making abortion illegal, that one issue is enough for them to get rolled over in 2024 without any of the other bullshit. The women haven't forgot it. I think they thought, well, we'll mention it before 2022 and they'll forget about it and we'll move on. Well, if they think that, they ain't fucking married. Because my wife, if I'm in an argument with her and it's going well for me, we start out in 83 when I got married and we go through every fucking sin henceforth about what I did. They do not fucking forget.
But I'll throw this out there. I have cousins that live in Ohio, and the majority of them, the older ones, they're Republicans. They're going to vote Republican no matter what.
All right.
But I have a cousin who she's constantly posting stuff on her Facebook page about, the what was that movie, The 2000 Mules, and like,
Right.
oh, it's a muscle watch. You got to see this. But then, she'll post stuff that's pro Trump, and then she'll post something about we must keep a woman's right to choose. And then when Ohio voted to enshrine abortion rights in their constitution, she wrote, "Way to go, Ohio! I'm proud of you." And somebody said, "About what?" She's like, "Oh, about keeping abortion rights." But then the next day she's posting something pro-Trump. So I that's one thing I'm worried about in Ohio is that I think it's Sherrod Brown is
Yeah.
is up for re-election. He's a Democrat.
Right.
But you've got people thinking like my cousin who are like, well, we need abortion rights, but I got to vote Republican.
But,
So, yeah,
the interesting thing is I heard a story that Donald Trump recognizes that the abortion issue is not a winner. Took a fucking long time, but he sees it's not a winner. So he's going to try to position himself as a moderate about abortion because he'll say anything to get elected or make money. The problem he has is that the Democrats have a little videotape that is going to be in every fucking commercial between now and November of 2024. And in that tape, he's bragging and taking credit for overturning Roe v. Wade. It's hard to deny that when you show this fucker crowing about taking away constitutional rights away from women. He can say, I think differently now, but the reason they're in this position because of that motherfucker and he owns it.
I think the Lincoln Project already put out a video I mean, not to that effect of him trying to come off as a moderate, but his sound bites of him talking about being responsible for overturning Roe v. Wade.
Right.
Um, but you can guarantee that some group is going to come out with a mashup of him starting out by bragging about how he is responsible for overturning Roe v. Wade, and then, oh no, I support a woman's right to choose. Like, he's talking out of both sides of his mouth, and I think the majority of people, well, at least Democrats or people who are independents, are smart enough to say, like, well, we know who he really is.
Right.
He's not a moderate. I don't even think he knows what he is, honestly. I think he's too stupid. he's going to say things and do things that get him the most money.
Yeah, he's not smart at all. He says whatever comes into his head that he thinks is going to help him. I've written some commercials, even some political commercials in my time. And if I was writing a commercial about this, I would have that video playing, no other voice, just that video playing. And then across the bottom, say, support women's rights, vote Biden. That's all you have to fucking do.
Yeah, that's all
It's
you have
cut
to
and
do.
dried.
As my accounting teacher said in college, keep it simple.
Absolutely. And frankly, with what we see in this country, simplicity is the way to go because people are easily swayed, easily misled, and that's one of the reasons we have the problem with Donald Trump. He goes out there, acts like he's fighting for the little guy, and people fucking believe it. He does just the opposite, but they still believe what he says as opposed to believing what they see. And that's a level of stupidity. There's not much you can do with that.
Yeah, and speaking of dipshits, and I know this isn't going to air till after, but I'm just seeing that this George Santos expulsion or debate on the expulsion vote is happening in the next hour. So hopefully, by the time everyone hears this, George Santos will be on his way back to where Staten Island or wherever he represents.
Well, that's interesting. Is he's taken a page from Madison Cawthorn in that he's going to expose all the corruption and criminality and perverted sex that's going on in Congress. I don't question that he's right. I'm just wondering if he has the courage to really put it out there. And the question I have is, and we'll know by the time this airs, do Republicans in Congress, are they worried about that? Because if they don't expel him now, based on the shit he's saying, that tells me we got a lot of problems in the fucking Republican Party in the House of Representatives because they're afraid he's going to say something. Because this whole thing about kicking him out, that's Republican pushed at this point. The Republicans want him out. So that'll be interesting too. By the time you hear this tomorrow, you'll know what the deal is. But if they don't kick George out, they're nervous about that flamboyant little boy's fucking mouth because he probably knows some shit.
I just can't help to think that he's just kind of echoing what Madison Cawthorn said because to try to save his own ass. Because I feel like Madison Cawthorn was more of a golden boy when he started
Right.
in Congress, like an up and comer, whereas George Santos has always kind of been a pariah, but they didn't want to expel him because they needed his vote.
Right.
I mean, because if let's say there was a red wave and the House of Representatives they had like a 40-seat majority,
He'd be gone.
He'd be gone. He'd be gone.
Right.
So I can't help to think he's just running his mouth like he always does.
Well, did you hear this story? The story I read it. I was on the podcast yesterday. I read this that Kevin McCarthy is talking about leaving Congress before Christmas. Can you
Yeah.
imagine? So what do they have? A 4-seat majority. Kevin McCarthy leaves, and George Santos presumably leaves. Now we're down to a 2-seat majority. It wouldn't surprise me with Kevin McCarthy because Kevin McCarthy is pissed off at the Republicans. Fuck you. I'm leaving. Let's make it tough for yourself. You could have treated me right, but now I'm going to fuck you back. I have a feeling he will do that.
Is it 4 seats? Didn't they elect a Democrat in Maine in one of the districts in Maine? Isn't it a
That could
3-seat
be.
majority now, or
That could be. That could
either
be.
way? Yeah, Kevin McCarthy sounds like the type of person that would do that. Fuck you guys, but at the same time, he agreed to all these conditions to become Speaker of the House. He wanted that title so badly. The stuff that he gave away, there's no way it was going to end well for him.
No. And then when he pulled Donald Trump back into the fold and he tells he says that well, I went down there because they tell me Donald wasn't eating. Take a look at Donald. That motherfucker's eating. He's eating well.
I'm actually looking forward to Liz Cheney's book. I will probably actually read it.
Yeah, I will probably too.
Or at least or the clip notes at least, because I mean, she is a ruthless person. Like I don't think she gives a shit. And
Yeah,
it was, I would never vote for her, but I would pick her in a street fight.
that's right. That's right. I would never vote for her, but if we're going head to head with somebody, I want her leading the pack because she's way tougher than I am.
Yeah, for sure,
All,
for
all,
sure.
all right, Fred, we're going to wrap things up for the Rational Boomer podcast. I want to thank you for stepping in, helping me out when my throat isn't working quite as well as it should. It's always great to hear your insight. And I don't know, I'm just saying, how about next time we don't wait a year before you fucking come back?
I it's the deal. I don't want to get another note to come down to the principal's office.
I
But I will say this. I know there's been people that have said talking about coming on the show. I think this is my fourth or fifth time
yeah,
on, and the first time was definitely the hardest, but it's really easy. I mean, within 5 to 10 minutes of being on the show, it's comfortable. It's just like having a conversation. You forget that you're being recorded.
right.
You really do. And so if anybody's on the fence about it, just do it.
If you're on the fence about it, I'm just going to say it up front, and I mean this with all due respect. If you're on the fence about coming on the show, come on the show. Don't be a pussy ass bitch. Just saying.
What Mike said, I agree.
All right. Well, Fred, thanks for coming on. I appreciate it. Those of you listening, thank you for taking the time out of your day to listen. I hope you have a great day, and we will talk to you again tomorrow.